Hi, and welcome to another teen episode of Twilight Chapters. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different and actually share two books with you. One is called My Lady Jane, and the other one is called My Plain Jane. They are both by a trio of authors, Cynthia Hand, Brodi Ashton, and Jodie Meadows. And what they do is they take different famous Janes from history and they retell their stories in new and imaginative ways. So I hope you enjoy them. We're going to read the introductions. My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brodi Ashton, and Jodie Meadows. Prologue. You may think you know the story. It goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a 16-year-old girl named Jane Grey who was forced to marry a complete stranger, Lord Guildford or Gifford something or other, and shortly thereafter found herself ruler of a country. She was queen for 9 days. Then she quite literally lost her head. Yes, it's a tragedy if you consider the disengagement of one's head from one's body tragic. We are merely narrators and would hate to make assumptions as to what the reader would find tragic. We have a different tale to tell. Pay attention. We've tweaked minor details. We've completely rearranged major details. Some names have been changed to protect the innocent, or not so innocent, or simply because we thought that a name was terrible and we liked another name better. And we've added a touch of magic to keep things interesting. So really, anything could happen. This is how we think Jane's story should have gone. It begins in England, or an alternate version of England, since we're dealing with the manipulation of history. In the middle of the 16th century. It was an uneasy time, especially if you were an Ethian. The Ethians were blessed, or cursed, depending on your point of view, with the ability to switch between a human form and an animal one. For instance, certain members of the general public could turn themselves into cats, which greatly increased the country's tuna fish consumption, but also cut down on England's rat population. Then again, other individuals could turn into rats, so nobody really noticed. There were those who thought that this animal magic was terrific, but others that saw it as an abomination that needed to be eradicated immediately. That second group, known as the Verities, believed that human beings had no business being anything other than human beings. And because Verities were largely in charge of everything, the Ethians were persecuted and hunted until most of them died out or went deep into hiding. Which brings us to one fateful afternoon in the royal court of England, when King Henry VIII, during a fit of rage, transformed into a great lion and devoured the court jester, much to the audience's delight. They clapped enthusiastically, for no one really liked the jester. Later, the courtiers discovered the incident was not a rehearsed act of artful deception, but indeed an actual lion masticating the jester. When the audience found out the truth, they no longer clapped, but they did remark, that clown had it coming. That very night, King Henry, once he'd returned to his human form, decreed that Ethians weren't so bad after all, and henceforth should enjoy the same rights and privileges as Verities. The decision to sanction the ancient magic made waves across Europe. The head of the Verity Church was not pleased with King Henry's decision, but every time Rome sent a missive denouncing the decree, the Lion King ate the messenger. Hence the phrase, "Don't eat the messenger." When Henry died, his only son Edward inherited the throne. Our story begins in the middle of tense times, with an increasing animosity brewing between Ethians and Verities, a teenage king with a tenuous grasp on the throne of England, and a young lord and lady who have no idea their destinies are about to collide, totally against their will. My Plain Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brodi Ashton, and Jodie Meadows. Prologue. You may think you know the story. Oh, heard that one, have you? Well, we say again, you may think you know the story. By all accounts, it's a good one. A penniless, orphaned young woman becomes a governess in a wealthy household, catches the eye of the rich and stern master, and, sigh, falls deeply in love. It's all very passionate and swoon-worthy, but before they can be married, a terrible treachery is revealed. Then there's fire and despair, some aimless wandering, starvation, a little bit of gaslighting, but in the end, the romance works out. The girl, Miss Eyre, gets the guy, Mr. Rochester. They live happily ever after, which means everybody's happy, right? No. We have a different tale to tell, don't we always? And what we're about to reveal is more than a simple reimagining of one of literature's most beloved novels. This version, dear reader, is true. There really was a girl, 2 girls actually. There was indeed a terrible treachery and a great fire. But throw out pretty much everything else you know about the story. This isn't going to be like any classic romance you've ever read. It all started, if we're going to go way, way back, in 1788 with King George III. The king had always been able to see ghosts. No big deal, really. He didn't find them frightening in the least. Sometimes he even had amusing conversations with long-deceased courtiers and unfairly beheaded queens who were floating about the palace grounds. But one day disaster struck. The king was walking in the garden when a mischievous ghost rattled the branches of a nearby tree. "Who's there?" called the king, because, as it happened, he was without his spectacles. "Look at me," answered the troublesome ghost in its most stately voice. "I'm the King of Prussia." The king immediately dropped into a bow. Quite coincidentally, he had been expecting a visit from the King of Prussia. "I am most pleased to meet you, your highness," he exclaimed. Then he tried to shake the tree's hand. This again would have been no big deal but for the dozen or so lords and ladies who had accompanied the king on his walk in the garden, who didn't see the ghost, of course, only the king mistaking a tree for royalty. From that moment on, poor George was referred to as Mad King George, a title he greatly resented. So George assembled a team made up of every kind of person he thought could help him be rid of these irksome ghosts. Priests who specialized in exorcisms, doctors with some knowledge of the occult, philosophers, scientists, fortune-tellers, and anybody in general who dabbled in the supernatural. And that's how the Royal Society for the Relocation of Wayward Spirits was established. In the years that followed, the Society, as it came to be called, functioned as a prominent and well-respected part of English life. If there was something strange in your neighborhood, you could write the Society a letter, and they would promptly send an agent to take care of it. Fast forward right past the reign of George IV to William IV ascending England's throne. William was practical. He didn't believe in ghosts. He considered the society to be nothing more than a collection of odious charlatans who had been pulling the wool over the eyes of his poor, disturbed predecessors for many years. Plus, it was a terrible drain on the taxpayer's dime, or shilling. So almost as soon as he was officially crowned king, William cut the society out of the royal budget. This led to his infamous falling out and subsequent feud with Sir Arthur Wellesley, a.k.a. the Duke of Wellington, a.k.a. the leader and Lord President of the RWS Society, which was now underfunded and under-respected. This brings us to the real start of our story, Northern England, 1834, and the aforementioned penniless orphan girl, and a writer, and a boy with a vendetta. Let's start with the girl. Her name was Jane. And that's it for the intros of My Lady Jane and My Plain Jane. Hope you liked them. If you did and you want to read more, you can come check them out at the library or check them out as an ebook. Have a good day.